What happens when a billionaire's daughter goes undercover and uncovers a betrayal that killed her father?
One intern. One corrupt empire.
One secret that changes everything. Stay tuned till the end, because the twist will leave you speechless, and the truth will inspire you forever. This is not just a story of money. It's a story of love, justice, and the power of rising together. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss our inspiring, life-changing content. Like and share this channel with others, because here, it's more than just storytelling. Every narrative carries a meaningful lesson to uplift your spirit and ignite your purpose. Black billionaire's daughter goes undercover as an intern, then fires the corrupt boss on the spot. I was born into money.
But not respect. Not truth. Not love.
They saw my skin and my father's billions, and they assumed I was just another spoiled rich kid playing pretend in a world built on struggle. They had no idea what it meant to carry my father's legacy. A man who built an empire from sweeping factory floors barefoot. His name echoed in boardrooms, but his heart lived in the streets he rose from. And when he died suddenly, the empire looked at me, a 25-year-old girl in heels,
and saw weakness. But this story,
it is not about me. It is about the man I met inside that empire. The man I hired without revealing who I was. The man whose quiet strength changed the course of everything. His name was Elijah. He came in for an internship.
Late. No resume. Shirt wrinkled. Eyes hollow.
I should have walked him out. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the silence he carried. The kind that spoke of sleepless nights and battles fought in secret.
He avoided eye contact.
But when I asked him why he wanted this position,
he looked up and said,
"Because if I do not make this work, my mother gets evicted, and my sister drops out of school. I have no backup plan." There was no arrogance in his voice. No begging either.
Only truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Real.
I said, "You start tomorrow." No one knew I was the daughter of the founder. They thought I was just another mid-level assistant running errands. That was exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see the rot from within. And what I saw broke me. The senior manager, Thomas. He was the cancer. He belittled the interns. He mocked their accents, their clothes, their dreams.
He stole credit, cut hours,
and funneled company funds into fake accounts. Elijah was his favorite target. Called him ghetto gold behind his back. Made him clean toilets after hours. Said it would build character.
But Elijah,
he swallowed every insult with grace.
And kept showing up.
Earlier each day.
Sharper.
Stronger. I watched him study financial reports during lunch. Watched him skip meals to send money home. Watched him work until his fingers bled, literally, during a warehouse audit. Still, he smiled at the janitor. Thanked the guards by name. Helped a pregnant coworker without a single camera on. One evening, I found him sitting in the break room alone. A single tear running down his cheek. His phone in his hand. A voicemail playing softly.
His mother's voice.
"I know you are working hard, baby.
But if it gets too hard, just come home.
We will figure it out together. Your worth is not in your success. It is in your heart." He did not know I was there.
I stood frozen. Humbled.
That night, I made a decision. I logged into the company's internal database using my authority as acting CEO. I pulled up every report Thomas had falsified.
Every stolen dollar.
Every intern he had exploited. Then I walked into the executive conference room. Thomas laughed when he saw me. "Aren't you supposed to be filing coffee orders?" I placed the file on the table.
Cold. Precise.
With every documented lie in it. I am Alexandria J. Royce, daughter of Jonathan Royce, majority shareholder of this company, and effective immediately. You are fired.
The room fell silent. Thomas stammered.
The executives froze. Then Elijah walked in, still wearing his warehouse vest,
still holding a mop.
He looked at me confused.
I smiled. Elijah. I turned to him.
Would you please sit at this table?
He blinked, shook his head,
laughed like it was a cruel joke. But I was not joking. He had earned that seat more than any legacy child in the room.
What happened next is a story worth telling,
because it was the beginning of everything.
He stood frozen, the mop still in his hand,
dripping water onto the marble floor. I nodded gently. It is yours now.
That seat, that voice, that power.
Elijah looked around the room. The same room where he had once been called a nobody. His eyes met mine.
Dark, tired, honest. I do not understand, he said. Why me?
Because you worked for this, I said.
You fought. You bled. You never took shortcuts.
This company needs more men like you. Men who remember pain, but do not let it define them. He slowly placed the mop against the wall,
took a deep breath, then walked to the seat at the table, and sat down.
Some executives whispered.
Some looked away, ashamed.
But none dared to speak. I slid a new folder toward him. It was a restructuring proposal.
One he would lead.
With full authority. You have the experience now. Not just with systems or logistics.
But with people.
With survival. With leadership from the ground up. Elijah opened the file with trembling hands. But when he looked back up, something had shifted. There was steel in his gaze now. Then we start with the interns, he said. No more unpaid labor. No more disrespect.
I smiled. Agreed.
What followed were the hardest 6 months of my life.
And his.
We rebuilt the foundation of the company from scratch. Fired those who had poisoned the culture. Promoted those who had been overlooked. Single mothers, quiet dreamers, resilient souls. Every night, we worked late. Not out of obligation, but out of love for what we were building. And somewhere between the 3 a.m. coffee runs and the early morning policy rewrites, I began to see Elijah in a different light. Not just as a fighter, not just as a survivor, but as a man who reminded me of my father. Grounded, kind, unshakably loyal. One evening, we were walking past the loading docks. The sun had just dipped beneath the skyline, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold. He stopped and turned to me. I never asked, he said. Why did you hire me that day? I paused. The wind brushed past us, soft and warm. Because you did not sell yourself. You showed yourself. And I saw a mirror of my own struggle. Not the same kind, but born from the same place. Loneliness, hope, and a fight nobody else could see. He looked down, hands in his pockets, voice low. I was falling apart, but you believed in me when I had nothing to offer. I reached for his hand. I did not save you, Elijah. You saved yourself. I just stood beside you when no one else would. He gripped my hand tightly, and for a long moment, neither of us said a word. But in that silence, everything changed. We were no longer CEO and intern. We were something else entirely. The silence between us was not empty. It was full of truths unspoken, of battles shared, of wounds not yet healed, but held tenderly in each other's presence. That night, Elijah walked me to my car. He opened the door, then hesitated. I never had anyone walk beside me before, he said softly. Not like this. I leaned against the car, watching the stars blink into view. I know the feeling, I replied. 4 years, I have been surrounded by power, but completely alone inside it. He smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. And then he whispered, maybe that is why we found each other. The weeks that followed were a blur of breakthroughs and breakdowns. We faced lawsuits, backlash, internal resistance. But through it all, Elijah stood like a wall beside me, unyielding, brilliant, human. And slowly, the company began to change. We launched a mentorship program for young people from underfunded neighborhoods.
We gave them stipends, real training, respect.
And when Elijah stood on stage to announce it, he was not wearing a name tag anymore. He wore a tailored suit, with his own name etched in gold on the podium. Elijah Malik, Director of Impact and Equity. He spoke with fire and grace. His story moved the room to tears. And as I watched from the front row,
my heart swelled, not with pride, but with love.
A quiet, deep kind of love that is born not from attraction,
but admiration, trust,
soul-level recognition. After the applause faded, he walked off stage and came straight to me.
No cameras, no crowd, just us.
He took both my hands in his. You built this space for people like me, he said. But now I want to build something for you.
I blinked, unsure what he meant.
He pulled out a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket.
It was worn, creased. I opened it.
It was the original internship rejection letter he had received. Before I overrode the system. This was supposed to be the end, he said. But you turned it into the beginning. I looked up at him, tears catching in my lashes.
And then he said,
I want to spend my life creating beginnings with you.
I could not speak. I could only nod.
Because in that moment,
I knew.
This was more than a company revival. This was resurrection.
Of love. Of purpose.
Of a dream that once belonged to my father. Now reborn in the hearts of two people who once stood in the shadows. But not everyone was ready to let go of the past. There were whispers.
Enemies.
Old alliances forming behind closed doors.
And one betrayal.
That would shake us both to the core. It began with a phone call.
Late at night. Private number. No name.
Elijah answered it in the kitchen, while I was upstairs reading old journals my father had written. I heard his voice go cold.
Then low. Then silent. When I came down,
he was staring at the wall. The phone still pressed to his ear. But the call long ended.
Elijah? I asked.
He turned to me slowly.
His eyes clouded.
That was Thomas. The name felt like poison in my throat.
What did he want? He clenched his jaw. Hard. I do not know how.
But he has proof.
I stepped closer.
Proof of what?
He hesitated. Looked away.
Elijah, talk to me. He finally met my eyes. He says you changed my records. That you manipulated the hiring system. That you gave me this position out of pity. Or something else. I felt like the ground shifted beneath me. Is that what he told you?
He nodded. Then whispered.
Tell me it is not true.
I reached for his hand. Elijah, listen to me.
Yes, I saw your application. Yes, I overruled it. But not out of pity. I saw something in you that nobody else bothered to look for. You earned everything you have. I just opened a door. His hands tightened around mine. But the doubt lingered in his eyes.
I stepped back. Tears stinging.
You think I gave you all of this? To feel good about myself?
No, he said quickly. I do not think that.
I need to know if any part of this,
us,
was built on a lie.
My heart cracked.
Not because of the accusation, but because I knew how deep his wounds went. How many people had offered him something, only to pull it away. Elijah, I said quietly,
if you cannot trust my heart,
then walk away now. But do not ever question your own worth again.
He stepped back. Just one step.
But it felt like miles. And for the first time since we began this journey,
I felt alone again. He left that night. No goodbye. No explanation.
Just the echo of a door gently closing, and the silence that followed.
Days passed. Then weeks.
He did not return my calls. Did not reply to my messages.
The company moved forward. The world kept spinning.
But something in me had stopped.
Until one morning,
I walked into my office and found a letter on my desk.
No name.
Just my initials written on the envelope.
Inside, was a photograph of Elijah in a courtroom, standing next to Thomas, testifying, but not for him, against him.
And beneath the photo,
A handwritten note.
some truths are worth fighting for, even if it means walking through fire first.
My hands trembled. My heart beat wild.
He had not abandoned me,
He had gone to war. For both of us.
but what he uncovered in that courtroom, what he risked to bring it to light, would lead to the most painful reckoning of our lives. The truth he uncovered was darker than either of us imagined.
It went far beyond Thomas.
Elijah had found evidence, buried contracts,
Offshore accounts.
names of executives still sitting on our board, who had been siphoning money for years.
Worse.
They had forged documents under my father's name.
After his death.
They had altered shareholder agreements, changed legal protections. They were preparing to force me out.
Quietly. Legally. Cruelly. And Elijah,
While the world believed he had disappeared in anger, was digging through every file, meeting whistleblowers in silence, risking his safety. He had even worn a wire to a secret meeting with Thomas.
alone. No backup. No protection.
He had walked into the lion's den.
For me. For the truth. And now,
The full weight of that truth rested in a sealed envelope in my hand. Photographs, statements, recordings. I stared out the window, tears clouding my vision. The skyline blurred by grief and gratitude. He had trusted me when it mattered most.
he had left.
Not because he doubted my heart, but because he knew I would try to protect him, even if it cost everything. He did not want protection. He wanted justice.
And he got it. A week later.
At the emergency board meeting, I stood in front of the executives, who had smiled at me for years. While planning my fall, Elijah entered from the side door,
Tall. Calm.
wearing the same suit he had worn as an intern on his first day.
A quiet reminder. Of where he came from. Of what they never saw coming.
I slid the evidence across the table. They opened it in silence. And the silence turned to rage.
Then panic.
Then resignation. The next vote was swift. Unanimous. Every corrupt member was removed. Thomas was arrested. The company was purged.
But the cost was heavy.
My family name had been dragged through the mud.
The media had feasted on it.
The scandal was everywhere.
And even in victory, I felt hollow.
Until I walked out of that building and saw Elijah waiting by the curb.
No cameras. No press. Just him. He held out his hand.
I never stopped believing in you, he said. I just needed to prove you never had to save me. We save each other, remember?
I stepped into his arms. And for the first time in months, breathed.
We stood there in the golden dusk, two souls who had risen from fire, side by side.
But peace was not promised.
Because just as we began to rebuild,
A letter arrived. No name. No return address. Inside it was a key.
and a message. If you want the truth about your father's death,
Come alone. I held the key in my palm.
small, cold, jagged at the edges. It weighed nothing.
And everything.
Elijah leaned over my shoulder, reading the note.
His breath stilled.
Do you think it is real? He asked. I did not answer, because I already knew. My father's death was ruled a heart attack.
Sudden. Unexpected. Clean. Too clean.
There were whispers at the time.
A missing file. An unsigned will.
A deal he had refused to sign the week before.
And then. Gone.
I had buried the questions, taught myself not to dig, because if I dug deep enough, I might find something that would shatter the image of the man who raised me on bedtime stories and morning wisdom.
But now,
Elijah, I said quietly,
I have to know. He looked at me,
his eyes dark with concern.
but he nodded.
I will drive.
No, I replied.
I have to do this alone. He wanted to argue.
But he understood.
Some ghosts must be faced in silence. Later that night, I followed the address scribbled on the back of the note. An abandoned warehouse. On the outskirts of the city.
The streetlights flickered.
The air smelled of rust and memory. I walked in slow, each footstep echoing through the empty space. The building groaned like it remembered pain. At the center of the room,
a desk, one chair, one folder,
and beside it,
an old man,
gray beard,
sunken eyes, skin like parchment. He looked up, and my breath caught.
Mr. Wells. I whispered. He had been my father's legal advisor. He disappeared the week after the funeral. Everyone said he had retired. He gestured to the chair. I have been waiting for you.
I sat, hands trembling, heart pounding.
He slid the folder toward me. What is this? He looked me in the eye.
Unflinching.
Everything your father died trying to protect.
I opened it, and the first page
made my blood run cold.
A contract, dated 2 weeks before his death.
Signed by nearly every member of the current board.
A hostile takeover agreement.
And on the last page, my father's signature.
Except,
it is not his handwriting, I whispered. Tears blurred the page.
Wells nodded. They forged it. He refused to sign.
He was going to expose them. And 2 days later,
he was dead, I finished.
Wells pulled out a flash drive. Laid low for years. I could not risk coming forward.
Not until now.
Not until someone like you had the power to finish what he started. I took the drive. Fingers shaking. There were recordings.
Emails. Testimonies.
Enough to destroy careers. Maybe even lives. But as I sat there, in that crumbling warehouse, surrounded by betrayal and silence, a single question burned in my chest. Would justice for my father cost me the peace I had just begun to build with Elijah?
And more urgently,
if they had silenced my father once, would they try again? I stepped out of that warehouse,
with the truth in my hand,
and my father's voice echoing in my heart. He had always taught me that integrity was more valuable than any fortune. That legacy was not built on what you leave behind,
but on who you become in the process. That night, I made a choice, not of revenge,
but of righteousness. Together with Elijah, we presented the evidence in court, not to destroy, but to heal the soul of a company that had once been the beating heart of my father's dream. The corrupt board members were stripped of power. Their influence collapsed under the weight of their greed. And in the ashes, we built something new.
Something clean, transparent, kind.
Elijah and I did not just restore a business.
We restored faith. In hard work. In honesty.
In love that is not built on need,
but on mutual belief.
Our mentorship program grew into a foundation that sent hundreds of young dreamers to schools, to internships, to places they were once told they did not belong. Elijah proposed to me,
not with a diamond,
but with my father's watch, restored and engraved with the words,
"Keep going." And I said yes.
Not because I needed saving, but because I had finally found someone who walked beside me, step for step,
wound for wound, dream for dream.
Together, we stood not as CEO and intern, but as two warriors who survived fire and chose to plant gardens in its wake.
Moral lesson.
Sometimes, the greatest battles are not won in boardrooms or courtrooms, but in the quiet choices we make.
To stay kind. To stay honest.
To love deeply even when it hurts. Power means nothing without purpose. Wealth means nothing without wisdom. And love means everything when it is built on truth, respect, and shared strength. Never underestimate the power of second chances, or the strength of those who rise when the world expects them to fall. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.